This is a Squiz podcast. We're your shortcut to being informed. Lauren Sams is the fashion editor at the Australian Financial Review. Some of you might remember her from our Year Ahead series earlier this year. She's all over the business of fashion and retail, so I pulled her in to talk to us about fast fashion and ultra fast fashion, in particular businesses like Temu and Shein, who in Australia alone are on track to record more than $2 billion in sales this year. They offer clothes and more at very low prices, but with all their products coming directly from factories in China, there are plenty of questions about the ethics of what we're buying from these sites, and in the case of Temu, the gamification of how we shop. We also chat about the consumer shift from wanting things now to wanting things cheap. And at the other end of the spectrum, we discuss how brands justify charging hundreds of dollars for a cotton shirt. Lauren, before we get into it, I want to ask you about a column you wrote on the 14th of February this year, declaring you would not buy one item of clothing in 2024. You've sworn off clothes. How's it going?
It's actually going really well, Kate. So I made a decision at the end of 2023 to not buy any new clothing. And by any new clothing, I mean like just anything. So,
jewelry, shoes, all included?
No. I can buy jewelry and shoes.
Okay.
But no new clothes and no sort of caveats around that. So no secondhand clothes or resale, just no clothing coming into my house. So, and I did that mainly because I was overwhelmed by the sheer amount of clothes that I had. And I realize how privileged and silly that may make me sound. But, you know, it got to the point, and again, privileged and silly warning, it got to the point where I would open my wardrobe and feel a sense of dread because there was just so much packed in there. It was so messy, so chaotic. I found it really hard to get dressed. I had no idea what was actually happening. I cleared it all out. I sent a lot to consignment stores, places like Dress for Success, which is a philanthropic organisation that outfits women for new careers.
So I'll put a link in people's episode notes to that because these are really, if you want to do this after Lauren's finished talking about it, it's a good place to send your stuff.
It is, yeah, particularly for corporate things, yeah. Gave some to friends, and then I took a photo, and I took a photo to say, this is what it looks like. It's ordered and neat. It needs to stay this way. So there needs to be equilibrium. So the other side of that is that it's a much more sustainable way to be. And I've found that actually it's freed up my time so much.
There are so many questions exactly like that. So, you know, have you found it less stressful to get ready every day?
Completely. Oh my gosh, because I can see what's in front of me, and I've discovered things in my wardrobe. But also, yeah, it's a lot easier and simpler. I'm not returning things to the post office. I'm not shopping. I was tempted. My daughter had a birthday party, a Taylor Swift birthday party, and I thought, oh, I've got this T-shirt that I want to wear, and I want to wear these black sequin shorts with it. And I did have a moment where I thought, okay, I'll look on Facebook Marketplace. And then I just thought, this is a 7-year-old's birthday party. It goes for 2 hours. I do not need
You don't need
these.
something new.
No, I do not. And that's kind of my attitude now. Like, do you really need this? And what I'm hoping is that a year off will recalibrate my value of clothing and the way that I perceive it.
And the way that you shop, I guess.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
I can hear people thinking, hold on, this probably is very easy for a fashion editor because she probably gets free clothes. Your answer to that, you answer that in your column.
Yes. So look, and part of my job is to talk about clothing and you know, kind of sell you clothing. Yes, I understand that. And I hope that, you know, by me doing this, it might show other people that you can love fashion and have a sense of style, but you don't need to be buying new things all the time.
Not constantly shopping. I think it's the perfect time to talk about fast fashion. That's what you're here to talk about today.
Yes.
There's fast fashion and then there's ultra fast fashion, and we're going to get into all of it. But first, explain what fast fashion is, and is there a line that can be drawn between what is just fashion and what is fast fashion?
It's a bit of a tricky one because it is kind of a nebulous title. Fast fashion is probably what you're thinking of. You know, when you think about fast fashion, it is those sort of mass-produced quite inexpensive clothing made from man-made fibers. So things, basically polyester, which is a type of plastic. So, and there's such a glut of it for many reasons. One reason is that until the early 1990s, we had tariffs on all clothing imports to Australia. When those tariffs were lifted, it was suddenly much, much easier for overseas importers to import clothes into Australia much more cheaply. Then, of course, you have places like Zara and H&M open in sort of the early 2000s in Australia. Obviously, they have become really big here now. And then you have online players, especially in the last 5 to 10 years. It's so much easier. You don't need a shop front. You don't really need much at all except the product and maybe an Instagram tile to sell it, and suddenly you've got a business and there is just clothing everywhere.
When I said that I wanted to talk to you about this,
Yeah.
you recommended me a book, and it was called Fashionopolis.
Yes.
The Price of Fast Fashion and the Future of Clothes. It's by Dana Thomas.
Yes.
Tell me why you recommended this specific book, and because it's kind of about the concerns around fast fashion.
Yes. So it's divided into 3 parts, and it does actually end on quite a hopeful note, which is partly why I recommended it. So Dana Thomas, first of all, is just a wonderful investigative journalist. She's covered fashion for many, many years. And this is, in fact, a follow-up to another book that she wrote called Deluxe. And it was about how the luxury industry came to be. And it's very interesting. This is sort of the other side of, the spectrum of fashion, and it's looking at how we became hooked on fast fashion. So, the materials that are used in fast fashion, all of that sort of thing. She also looks at labor practices and the fact that, when we think about fast fashion, we do think about companies that are secretive sometimes or often about their manufacturing processes and how those clothes come to be. And often we think of fairly recent things like the 2013 Rana Plaza collapse. But in fact, fashion has profited from the forced or underpaid labour of people for centuries,
a long
really.
time.
Yeah. And so she looks at that and how endemic that is to the fashion industry. And then the last part, she looks at what some designers and companies are doing to correct that and to look at more sustainable alternatives. I think ultimately fashion is not a sustainable industry because you are creating something new inherently. That's what it's about. But there are better ways to do it. And it does end on a nice optimistic tone and looking at people who are, trying to find better solutions to these big, big problems.
We'll include that as one of our club picks this week. And I think what you said to me perhaps before we started recording was that it's not preachy. It's just great information. It's well researched and a great read just generally.
Yeah. And I think because she comes from a place of loving fashion herself, it's something that she personally is wrestling with. And it's not, never buy anything new again or, you must.
Or you're a horrible person for doing so.
No, it's not preachy or holier than thou, and I think that's a really good place to come at it. No one likes to be told what to do.
Yeah, and I think we're all guilty of buying something from Zara and H&M and Cotton On, and we're not here to tell you not to do that.
Completely.
One of our other club picks is a long investigation by Wired. One of the quotes in it, I want to read it to you. In recent years, many of the largest fashion companies have felt pressure to make small moves towards reform. Now, though, there's an emerging generation of ultra fast fashion companies that have come along, and many are doing little, if anything, to adopt better practices. So the reference there is to, in particular, Shein. So it's by far the biggest at the moment. Talk to me about Shein. I've seen the branding. I know it's so familiar, but I didn't know a lot about it.
Yes. So Shein is relatively well established in this space. So it was actually launched in 2008.
Which was a while ago, in fact.
Sure.
We're in 2024.
I know.
Blows my mind. Yep.
So it has been around for a while. In fact, it's so well established and so profitable that it's considering an IPO, an initial public offering in the US, which means that it will be listed either on the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange. It is, as you say, ultra fast fashion. And, I was speaking before about Zara and H&M, and they used to be considered sort of the gold standard. And I put that in air quotes because that means different things to different people. But the sort of pipeline from design to on shelf. So what Zara and H&M do is they have these design teams and they look at things like runway shows and, things like that. They glean inspiration from those designers and they make similar designs.
Like products, yeah.
Yes. And that pipeline
En masse.
With vastly different materials than, say, Dior or Chanel would make them or whatever the designer is. That pipeline is about 6 weeks, or it was anyway. Shein can do it in a matter of hours. And that's because they have this vast network of third-party manufacturers, somewhere in the vicinity of like 5,000 that they have. They're based in Singapore, but these manufacturers are in China. It's a huge number of suppliers to Shein. And what they do, they're not looking at runway shows. They're looking at social media trends. They're looking online. So let's say, Kate, you're wearing a black tank top. Let's say the data crunchers at Shein are like, oh, that looks good. I think that'll be trending. And they, enough of those sort of Instagram posts featuring black tank tops come up. They start making them. And what they can do based on sales, they can really quickly determine if something is going to sell quickly, then they can ramp up production of that particular item. And so it's a very agile system, and it means that they can sell a huge amount of clothing in a record time, basically, at very, very low prices. And obviously that's very attractive to people.
And I mean, there's a couple of bits to this. One of which I shared a video of. I think it was a Wall Street Journal investigation into Shein, and it's literally just hovering over something on their website can then prompt the data lords to send, this many people are hovering over this. It must be of interest. Can we look to produce more of those? The key thing is that it is based in China. A lot of this labor is based in China, and a lot of question marks about the way they're able to produce this much.
Yeah, Shein is a very secretive company. The fact that they're listing for an IPO is interesting because when you do that, you come under scrutiny. You go through a process called due diligence, which means that, it kind of sort of every part of the business is dissected and looked at. And so they will have to open themselves up. There was an influencer trip last year where Shein tried to go on a bit of a press tour. So they invited some influencers to some of their factories, and wouldn't you know it, it was all clean and safe, and all of the workers were very, very happy. So that was quite an interesting little chapter in Shein.
And I guess the other part to this is that you've got your designer fashion, you've got your layers down. I mean, this is cheap.
It's very cheap.
Very, very cheap.
We're talking about a T-shirt for $2, dresses for $6 or $7. And what is happening is that it's recalibrating fashion as a single-use item. So when you think about something that's $6 or $7, I bought coffee this morning and that was $5.50. And that's a single-use item to me. I have my coffee.
Actually is you cannot use that twice.
No. And so when you're talking about a dress that's sort of an equivalent price, people equate it with something that doesn't need to be valued. You don't need to wear it again in people's minds because it's not worth it. And it's okay. People, I think they reconcile that idea with themselves that, if I don't wear it again, that's all right because I've only spent $6 on it. And so, I really worry that we've got this, and it's not just young people, it's
absolutely not.
It's everyone.
Yeah.
And so, I worry that it really recalibrates the way that we value and perceive fashion as, something that doesn't need to be looked after or valued or kept. And obviously, there's a price for that.
There's a lot of questions also, and this is where I want to introduce Temu, about whether these sites, commerce platforms, e-commerce platforms can justify the cost to make these products with what they're able to charge for them. Temu is a competitor to Shein. You said Shein entered the market in 2008. Temu has been around for not much more than a year, already turning over billions of dollars. Talk to us about Temu, another Chinese business.
Yeah, so it is a relatively new player on the market. It has spent so much money on marketing, and it's kind of what it does is gamify sales. So I actually had not been onto the Temu website until we started talking about this.
Me neither, and it's quite something. I highly recommend just going and looking at what it does.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain the experience, but please try.
So
please.
What they want you to do is buy something. And so they'll kind of do anything to make you buy something. So there's all these pop-ups, and you can, there's like a game where you can like feed fish. And I played this game where, you feed enough fish and you get a voucher, or you get a free gift sent to your house. And so they're spending millions, perhaps even billions of dollars on customer acquisition. I read something, I think it was in the Wall Street Journal, about the amount that they're spending on customer acquisition. And it's something like $10 per customer, which is enormous.
Enormous. They cannot be making money.
And it's not sustainable. This is a company that's only been around for a little over a year, as you say. And obviously the plan is hook people in on these very, very low prices. Shein really only sells fashion and some homewares, but Temu is you want sort of bolt cutters or a dress or headphones, and it's all there.
Yeah.
Hook people on these low prices, get them in with gamified loyalty vouchers and gifts and things like that, and then get rid of those or, reduce them somehow and keep them buying. It's kind of brilliant.
It's incredibly brilliant. And I heard it on, I think I was listening to a podcast by The Economist, and they were talking about the economics of this.
Yes.
For the last sort of 10 years or maybe longer, it's been all about how quickly can I get something. So Amazon's offer has all been about, I can get it relatively cheaply, but I can get it now. I can get it tomorrow. I can get it, I can get it in time for the Taylor Swift concert or whatever it might be. With Temu, they're betting that people will prioritize cheap over pace.
Yeah.
So you might have to wait a few weeks for whatever you're ordering, but they're betting that people will prefer to pay less to wait longer.
Yeah, I think we have been conditioned to that sort of instant gratification of, Amazon Prime delivery and those sorts of things. So it's interesting that Temu is gaining such a foothold when we have become used to that, but it shows just how important price is, and I think will continue to be.
Lauren, we've talked about fast fashion, cheap fashion. I want to now flip this conversation on its head and talk about the other end of the spectrum where you have companies like The Row charging, $700 for a cotton t-shirt.
Is that not a reasonable price to you, Kate?
As someone who I'm semi-interested in fashion, but that seems ridiculous. How do you justify that cost, and how does that look for a consumer, and why?
Sure. So The Row is, part of a new-ish breed of brands that speak to a luxury client, but they're not the heritage luxury brands that we were talking about before, but they are certainly reaching that high net worth individual who really invests in clothing. So there are arguments to say that, yes, that T-shirt is worth that much because of the way that it is cut, the precision and skill of the pattern makers and the designers, the material that is used. However, there's also an argument to say that for many people, price is actually the same way that an inexpensive item can drive a sale, an expensive item can drive a sale as well. So there is this perception that the more expensive something is, the more valuable it is, whether that is true or not. So, designers and brands and fashion businesses pay a lot of attention to the way that they're positioning the pricing of their items because it says something about the brand and about the product. So, a bag might cost something like $500 to make, but it will be sold for something like $4,000 because that is the kind of market that brand wants to go after. And when those things become normalized, customers adapt to it and they buy them.
So in the case of a cotton t-shirt, there's probably a lot of value placed in that.
Yes.
In the case of something tailored, like it may be a coat, or do you think that's slightly different? There is actually value in the way it's made.
Yes, I think so. Yes, absolutely. So if you were to get sort of a bespoke, made-to-measure suit, you could get that for, I don't know, something like $1,200, something like that. I actually think that's a very good investment, and you should Everyone should do that, actually. Everyone should have a good suit. But yes, there is value in the design, in the labor behind that. You're talking about something that is made for you with, I would imagine, depending on where you go, really high quality materials and something that can be tailored again, if your needs change.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And something that can be dry cleaned and, hopefully worn for a very, very, very long time. Yeah.
I don't think that someone like me who is semi-interested in fashion cannot talk about a clip from The Devil Wears Prada when I'm talking to a fashion editor. Is there another movie like it for your industry? Probably
God,
not.
No, it's just the best.
Okay, good. So it's cool to ask about The Devil Wears Prada and the blue sweater and how the dressing down that Miranda Priestley gave Anne Hathaway.
Because it's such a succinct and perfect way of explaining how the fashion industry works. It's that trickle-down effect of like, yes, it begins with these designers who we all, we know the names of them. You see them on the runway and then, it trickles down to the sort of mid-tier designers and then eventually it gets to Zara, H&M, and then it might get somewhere else. And what does she say in the end? Eventually it ends up in, the basement bin where you picked up that cerulean sweater.
Whatever the line is, we'll pull that clip out and make sure we share a link to it because, I'm sure most people listening have seen it, but if you haven't, it's a great thing to see.
Yeah.
It's quite old now, that movie. I don't even know when it was released, but we're talking a little while ago.
Yeah.
Has that changed, that process? And is there this fast fashion and then ultra fast fashion now? Has that changed, or would you say that the designers are still setting the scene?
It's certainly sped up. So definitely the designers are still setting trends. Handbag trends in particular sort of trickle down and you see that, you might see something on a runway and there's a bag at the moment, the croissant bag, which is, has been seen on a couple of different runways, but, now they're at like Uniqlo, for example. You definitely still see that. But also, I think we're seeing trends from a wider variety of places. So I think definitely the frequency of trends has picked up and the speed at which they go from runway to on shelf or, your doorstep has definitely sped up. But also, there's this broader range of where we're picking up trends. So it could be something like a Taylor Swift concert or, I saw last week that Beyonce's album, which features a song about Levi's jeans, has sent Levi's stock price skyrocketing. So I think we've got, because just the nature, as you say, the nature of media has fragmented so much, we are completely saturated all the time, that trends are coming from a wide variety of places. And I think it's actually quite hard to determine what will become a trend these days, which is why Shein relies on numbers.
Just the data. And I guess that's in you explaining that. My question is, could Shein set a trend in that case? Could Temu set a trend without us even knowing because of their ability to look across? A customer base of 3.3 million in the US.
Yeah.
They'll be able to see what people are looking for, what people are searching for, what they're clicking on, what they all want to wear. Is the typical way that we set fashion trends challenged?
Yeah, definitely. It definitely is. And I think it's getting harder and harder to predict, what will become a trend. People still do it. I think on the podcast at the end of last year, I was talking about red.
You did flag that red would be a thing, and silver jewelry.
Silver jewelry, yes. But I think it's getting harder and harder because, both the speed and the range of influencers has just changed remarkably.
And our ability to buy from so many different places.
That too.
Fashion more broadly.
Yes.
Other big themes you're seeing?
One of the big things I'm seeing is that brands are investing more and more in retail. So we were talking about the pandemic earlier and the fact that, no one could shop in store and we all got these little thrills from shopping online and it was all very fun. But actually now what I'm seeing is that because we do, we're much more conversant in sort of shopping online now. Brands are seeing their stores as almost like galleries. And so the idea is not to have every single product on the shelf. It's not so you come in and you have like 20 white t-shirts to choose from. It's a very carefully selected curation of what that brand might have to sell you.
I'm thinking about assembly label. You go in there and you go, well, where are all their things? And there's one shirt and then they go out the back and get it.
That's right.
Is that kind of what you're talking about?
You go online to get it.
Or you go online to get it.
Yeah,
exactly.
you might go in and you might think, I don't know this brand, but from what I can see, I like this. I might try it on. I might ask for something from the back. Or when I go home, I'll hop online.
Guilty.
Yeah.
So guilty
and
of this.
then I'll buy it. And so, retailers are really starting to think about this sort of omni-channel presence and strategy. So, using their retail space almost like a billboard, come in, have a look. You don't have to buy anything, but we'll target you later with social media ads and make sure you do.
And even just in you saying that, it's the way I shop.
Sure. I think we all do.
I think that's a really interesting observation. The biggest and probably most difficult question for you, just to tie everything we've spoken about together, is there a way to shop affordably and sustainably?
Yes, definitely. So my first suggestion would be rethink secondhand. So secondhand used to mean going to Vinnie's and trawling through racks and racks of jeans that don't fit you and that sort of thing. And certainly you can still do that. And actually Vinnie's is a treasure trove. And they've actually jacked up their prices. So because a lot of them have, because they know that people are looking for cool vintage things. But rethink what secondhand is. So at the top of the episode, I was talking to you about what I did with my excess glut of clothing, and a lot of it I sent to a consignment store. So they buy your clothing, they sell it, and this is not, a pair of jeans from the 90s. This is like a suit from sort of 6 months ago, and you can buy designer labels. The second thing I would say is think about rental. So particularly for
events and things like that. It's just, you're so right.
For something that you might wear once, like for a wedding, or I don't know, if you're going to a ball or something like that anytime soon, Kate.
Do you have an invitation for me? I haven't got any ball invitations on my calendar.
When I get invited to a ball, you will be my plus one.
And I will rent.
Excellent. Yes, we'll both rent. So it's a really good idea, but not just for things like occasion dressing. Like I know, I work at the AFR, we work with lots of, our readers are corporate women and men and women. And, I know a lot of women who will hire a suit for a presentation or a conference. So it's not something that they've been seen in before. I've heard of people hiring things for job interviews for, let's say you're a teacher and you're going for a more like an office job, but you don't have those clothes, but you don't want to invest yet. In case it's not the right move for you, you can hire something like that. So just kind of recalibrating, like, what do I need this for? How long do I need it? If it's a wedding, you might just want it for the one night. And can I get it in a slightly different way? There's so many rental places. There's one called Glam Corner, which runs out of Sydney, one called The Vault, which runs out of WA, and they're fantastic resources. And then the final thing, and again, I don't want to sound preachy, but do you really need it? Think about what's in your closet. Think about, do you have a friend who might have something? And, do you really need it?
Do you really need it? It's a question for a lot of parts of our lives. And I think this is what's interesting to me is when you talk about retail and you talk about fashion, you can apply it to so many different things.
Sure.
It's just another version of what we already do. But it's such a good point, and particularly about the decluttering and actually getting a good look at your wardrobe.
Yes.
Actually getting a good look at what you own. Kate, it does make a huge difference.
And, I don't have some sort of capsule wardrobe where I might have, 2 pairs of black pants and a white T-shirt. Oh no, my closet is still full after this decluttering. I have an embarrassing number of jumpsuits, for instance.
This is a podcast, so you can't see Lauren hesitate to say how many jumpsuits she has, but you do like a jumpsuit.
I do love a jumpsuit. Yeah. And, I still have something like 16 pairs of jeans. It's not like I have no clothes anymore, but it's more than enough.
And in the meantime, I guess, just in regards to Temu and Shein specifically, it's kind of a whole nother level of consideration, isn't it?
It sure is. Yeah. It's, I do understand the drive for something that's inexpensive and, particularly for, like a kid's T-shirt or something like that. Yes, my kids, when I buy them clothing, it's like taking a car out of the lot. It loses its value immediately. I do understand that. But again, I would have a pause moment perhaps.
And I think more than anything, just hope this episode of News Club has informed you a little bit more about those companies, what they're about, and the question marks over them. Certainly some food for thought on how we shop. Thank you so much, Lauren.
Thank you, Kate.
News Club is the place to go for conversations about the news. I'll be back next week with another episode of News Club, but in the meantime, Weekly Wrap is out on Saturday morning. First thing, it's your weekend dose of the weekend news and what's coming up. Thank you for listening to this episode. I'll chat to you then.